The environment, in this case coastal areas and sea, provides abundant sources that can be taken benefit from. We use the environment to protect us from natural disasters like mangroves that acts as a natural protection from huge waves and tsunami, and therefore the preservation of coastal areas is important not only for Indonesia but also for countries in the world. And how can we actually help to actively preserve the environment? English News Service reporter Canon Judge earlier interviewed Dr. Linwood Pendleton, a marine economist from Duke University's Nicholas Institute for Environmental Policy Solutions, who shared his views on the issue in our Talking Point segment.
Well, hello and welcome back to English News Service Talking Point. Right now with me, Canon Judge. Right now I'm sitting inside of America, and we are going to have a discussions on the coastal economics issues. And for that we have Dr. Linwood Pendleton, a marine economist from Duke University. All right, hello Linwood.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
So you've been visiting Indonesia for more than 1 week, and you visit also East Kalimantan, and you visit Berau, I guess, yeah?
I visited Berau and I visited the villages of Biduk and the Solomon Straits.
All right, so it's a very interesting thing that I can see a marine economist here, and we are going to talk about the coastal economics issues. But before we are talking more in the coastal economic issues itself, how do you see this coastal economics industry in Indonesia itself?
Well, it's more than an industry, it's a way of life, and a lot of my work is trying to understand how the ocean and ocean ecosystems contribute to people in an economic way that they don't recognize because they don't have to pay for it. But if you didn't have the ocean, they would have to pay for it. So how much of their nutrition comes from fish? How much of the protection of the shoreline comes from corals and mangroves? These aren't things that have an industry, but if you lose that, then it damages houses or you have to buy nutrition. So that's part of economics. But we are seeing the industrialization of the sea. And it started with fishing, and in Indonesia you have fishing at the small scale level in the village, but you also have fishing offshore for tuna and big fish, and that's very much an industry. It's an industry that's always been hard to regulate because they're out there in the big ocean and it's not always easy to know what they're doing. And then in Indonesia we're seeing the growth of a tourism industry, I think, that recognizes now that Indonesia has unique things to offer for tourism in the ocean, especially coral reef tourism.
All right, I can say that Indonesia is the biggest archipelago country in the world. So does this quite impress you?
It impresses me and it scares me because it's so difficult to manage even a small shoreline. Indonesia's got a gigantic shoreline and many islands that are hard to get to. So it's hard to provide assistance, it's hard to provide regulation, and you have cultures that differ not just from island to island, but even within an island, they differ from the sea to the mountains and from east to west. So I think it's a real challenge. You have a diversity of ways that people use the sea for economic reasons, and that's good. But it's a daunting challenge to think about how do you manage an economy and a population that's growing so fast, where we know that everything we do as people may have an impact on the sea, yet it's an economy and a people that depends more on the sea than just about any other country I know.
All right, so how do you compare the coastal economics in Indonesia and in the US?
So in Indonesia, the coastal economy really is driven by fisheries and by the protection of people who live near the sea, and a small but growing tourism industry. And it's not small, it's actually quite big, and it's probably as big as the US tourism industry. In the US, though, the marine industry is dominated by tourism. The fisheries sector is smaller than it is in Indonesia, and it's growing smaller because we've overfished. And it's dominated by shipping and large-scale industrial activities. So I think here there's a more integrated approach. But one of the things that we've learned recently with a couple of big storms is that where we do have healthy ocean ecosystems and wetlands, we have less damage from storms than where we've lost that. And we've lost too much of our wetlands. And there's a real interest now, I think, in restoring marine ecosystems in the United States to protect the shoreline. It's something that Indonesia already knows, but is at risk of losing.
All right, so you've seen the fisheries in Indonesia and also the fishermen itself. So I think if we compare the fishermen of Indonesia and the fishermen in the US, Indonesian fishermen is not really as advanced as the US have in terms of the technology they use to do the fishing itself. And how do you see this?
Well, you know, I think the place where the difference is most noticeable is in the techniques used to fish. So yes, Americans or fishermen are really good at catching fish, and they can catch more fish with fewer people than just about anywhere in the world. But where we are really good now is we've eliminated the kinds of fishing practices that damage the sea through strong regulation. So when we have nets that can trap turtles, we have something called a turtle excluder device. The turtle can get free. We try not to trawl and drag on the bottom. We avoid areas that are sensitive, and we've mapped them all out. So we've become very good at reducing the environmental impact of our fishing. Whereas in Indonesia, people still use cyanide, people still use dynamite, and they still practice many types of fishing that destroy the coral and the resources that the fish depend on. So I think that we can make the biggest improvements in Indonesia in the short term by getting rid of those destructive fishing practices first, and then once we do that, we can think about now how can we improve the efficiency of the fishery. Because if you improve the efficiency of the fishery, you extract more fish, and you don't improve the environmental quality of the fishing, that is, it's still destructive, then you're taking more and producing less, and that's not going to be sustainable.
So are you actually saying that the traditional fisheries device is more friendly to our ecosystem itself in the marine sectors?
Some traditional fishing devices like traps and hook and line are at low levels friendly, and so yes, they're friendly. It's the more recent use, say in the last 60 years, of chemicals and bombs really that are not sustainable. And we're seeing that. We're seeing places where people can't fish anymore that they fished for, you know, thousands of years before.
All right, so do you think that the fishermen in Indonesia needs an education more on the awareness of the technology use? I mean the eco one, the good one, the good technologies, because in the economic systems, demands is getting bigger and bigger as the population also getting bigger. So food efficiencies and food sufficiency in the world, in the whole world, is quite an issue right now, because land are just decreasing while population is popping up. And how do you see this?
Well, so I don't think it's a lack of understanding. I think it's economic drivers right now that cause people to use destructive fishing. And that is, if you're a fisherman and you can kill as many fish as possible now and get money for it, then you can move someplace else. It's the people who live in a community who want to stay there who are the most interested in fishing sustainably. So I think that the problem isn't a lack of understanding, the problem is a lack of enforcement of laws that prevent this, because when you blow up a reef, you don't just hurt your future fishing, you hurt everybody else's fishing, and there's no punishment for that. And that's what we've learned in the United States, is that even when people understand the consequences of what they do, they tend to do things that may not be sustainable if the market pushes them towards that. So when you could only sell fish locally, there was no pressure to catch more fish than you could sell. Now when you can catch fish in biduk-biduk and sell it in Barao or Samarinda, there's no limit to who will buy your fish. And if you can sell fish on the world market, there's no limit. So what you see is this demand, like you said, has increased dramatically, and there's a rush, I think, to fill that demand. And if you tell people, well, if you use a sustainable fishing method, but it costs more, they may not use it even if they understand it's sustainable, because they're busy trying to make money from this big market that they face.
So, is this your first time to visit Indonesia?
It's my second time.
Your second time. So you were here before?
I was in Bali.
You were in Bali, and did you see also the coastal economics potentials in Bali?
I did, but what I saw was that I only saw a few places in Bali, and I saw penuturan, and I visited the Menjangan National Park, and there you can tell that fishing has declined over time. There's not so much fish, but the coral is still healthy, and this healthy coral is helping to fuel a tourism economy that's based around scuba diving. So that seems to me to be very sustainable. I spent a week scuba diving there, and I thought it was wonderful. And I think the interesting thing about Bali is it's an opportunity to mix cultural tourism with environmental tourism or ecotourism. I see that in other places that I look in Indonesia too, because Indonesia has so many cultures, so you can get culture and you can get the environment in one trip.
All right, as the PhD holder in coastal economics, so what would you like to do if you are given a chance to do a research in Indonesia's coastal environment?
So I think one of the things that makes Indonesia interesting for an economist or someone who really focuses on people is how many kinds of people there are and how many cultures there are and how many different ways there are of using the sea. Some of them are sustainable and have been used by people for thousands of years. Some of them are not, because people have just moved to the sea from other areas. So if I were to work here, what I really want to do is understand how people's use of the sea affects their well-being, their income, their education, and their health.
All right, so any suggestions for Indonesian government to do a support on this industry?
Yeah, so I think if I were the Indonesian government, one of the things I would do very quickly is start surveying coastal households to find out how they depend on coastal resources and how that dependence has changed over time. And then what is it about them that affects their use? Is it their culture? Is it their religion? Is it how long they've lived in a place?
All right, it was a great short discussions.
Good.
From you, and good luck with what you are doing back in the US.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
On my trip I'm going to Sulawesi and Sumatra as well.
Well,
so I'm very happy about that.
Have a nice trip then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, that was our coastal economics discussions with Dr. Linwood Pendleton, a marine economist of Duke University. I'm Kenan Judge signing off. We are going back to the studio, and goodbye for now.